December 4th, 63 BC. This is the day that Marcus Tullius Cicero gave the fourth of his Catiline orations. These were speeches that he gave during his time as Roman consul, specifically in response to the Catilinarian conspiracy. That was a plot by someone else to overthrow the Republic and oust the consuls. Little did all of them know that in less than a century the Republic would indeed be overthrown. December 5th, 663 AD. This is the date of the Fourth Council of Toledo, presided over by Isidore of Seville, seen in the painting here. Toledo is in modern-day Spain and in the 7th century. Underrated time in history, this is the Visigothic kingdom. They are the ones who took over after Rome fell. And this council dealt with uniformity of liturgy throughout the kingdom, as well as policies that were tough on Jews, specifically ones who were baptized into Christianity but then relapsed into their former faith. December 5th, 1033 AD. The Jordan Rift Valley earthquake was an ancient earthquake from around the 11th century, and it came along the northern part of the Jordan River. It was part of a series of a few earthquakes that happened in the same place over the span of around 2 years. And this one was bad enough that it became famous enough that we know it today. This one actually, despite being so far inland, it caused a tsunami in the Mediterranean, killing people not only in the Levant, but around other coastal regions as well. December 5th, 1408 AD. Emir Edigu of the Golden Horde. These are the descendants of the Mongols who conquered pretty much most of the known world. This Edigu guy decides that he wants to retake Moscow, and on this date he arrives there, he burns up the countryside, but he fails to actually take the city. December 5th, 1484, Pope Innocent VIII, who was less than innocent, issues a papal decree declaring an inquisition in Germany, appoints inquisitors to root out witchcraft in the area. But if you've been listening to Martyr's Mirror that I've been recording, you would know that it's not just witchcraft, it's the Hussites, and the Waldensians, and the poor men of Lyon. And if you know your history of the Reformation, you would know that one Mr. Martin Luther, famous for his 95 Thesis, was born just a year before this decree. So in historical context, this is one of the last times that the Catholic Church would have near complete cultural hegemony. This is the attempt of that political body to delay the inevitable, make their opponents seem like crazy people, get a bunch of them killed for one of the last times, before millions of people start waking up and deciding that the words of Jesus Christ supersede the words of any human being. December 5th, 1496, this is a less than flattering painting of King Manuel I of Portugal. I am sorry to that dude, I don't know what that painter was thinking. But on this date, Manuel issues a decree expelling the Jews from his country. And again, if you know your history, 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. He sailed from Spain. Spain is a very close neighbor of Portugal. The journey of Columbus was sponsored by King Ferdinand and Isabella of Spain. And it was around that same time, a few years before Manuel does his expulsion, that Ferdinand and Isabella likewise expel the Jews from Spain. This also comes around the same time that both Spain and Portugal would begin a great age of exploration, ultimately conquering a very, very impressive amount of land in the New World, both North and South America, leading to modern-day Brazil still speaking Portuguese, and most of South and Central America still speaking Spanish today. December 5th, 1578, Sir Francis Drake. This is after he sailed through the Strait of Magellan, that is the tiny strip of ocean going between South America and Antarctica. So now he arrives at the western coast of South America, and he arrives at a place called Valparaiso in the modern-day nation of Chile. And in this place, he is less than friendly to the natives. December 4, 1757, the Battle of Leuthen. This was part of the 7 Years' War in Europe. It was fought in Silesia, present-day Poland, and the result was a total Prussian victory. The opposing force was completely routed and forced to retreat, securing Prussia's control over the region. December 5th, 1770, the Boston Massacre. This is not the date of the massacre itself. This is the day that 2 British soldiers are found guilty in court of manslaughter. The victims being Crispus Attucks and Samuel Gray. They are commonly known as the first casualties of the American Revolution. Now, calling this a massacre was, of course, an exaggeration. The crowd was, in fact, antagonizing the group of soldiers very heavily. This attack was provoked. However, it is commonly known as the Boston Massacre because newspapers at the time, wanting to stoke up revolutionary sentiment, wrote about the event far and wide in the most inflammatory terms, and the name stuck. December 5th, 1791, this is the date of death for Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. He was 35 years old at the time. He died of illness. And one thing I love about traveling is when you go to a place and see a piece of history that place loves to keep alive. In this case, Mozart and other Austrian composers are very much still celebrated today in the city of Vienna. That is a city with a true love of classical music, and a city which made no small contribution to European classical music. December 5th, 1847, many know Jefferson Davis as the President of the Confederacy during the Civil War. However, 14 years before that, on that date, he was elected to the U.S. Senate. December 5th, 1848, this is President James K. Polk of the United States, and on this day he announces to the nation a confirmation that California does indeed have large amounts of gold. This sparked what is known as the California Gold Rush. 1849, the following year, was a famous year for people getting in a wagon and going all the way west across the continent. And for that reason, because so many people did it, they became known as 49ers. Within 2 decades, the Transcontinental Railroad going all the way across the continent, east coast to west coast, would be completed. Towns of American settlers would spring up all the way from the Midwest to the Pacific and everywhere in between. And suddenly, California, which at the time was one of the most remote places in the Union, would become one of the most populous places in the Union. In fact, 1850, 2 years after this declaration, was when California would attain. December 5th, 1914, this is the beginning of the Imperial Trans-Antarctic Expedition. This was a mission of scientific exploration with the goal of crossing the southern continent over land. And the imperial part of this expedition's name, if you hadn't guessed, was the British Empire. This expedition was dreamt up by Sir Ernest Shackleton. The ship you see in the photograph that was used on the expedition is called the Endurance. That ship was built in 1912. The expedition was ultimately unsuccessful, but it became a symbol of human perseverance and, pardon the pun, endurance. The pioneering spirit required to explore hostile, unknown places. December 5th, 1926, this is the date of death for Claude Monet. He is a famous painter from France. He is known as one of the big figures of the Impressionist art movement. December 5th, 1933, the 21st Amendment was ratified. This was the end of prohibition in the United States. People could once again, legally, drink booze. A true cause for celebration by the same nation that brought to you the Whiskey Rebellion. And for students of American history who want a quick trick for remembering which amendment is which, the 18th Amendment, before that you had to be 18 years old to buy alcohol. Well, the 18th Amendment, no more alcohol. And then the 21st Amendment, after that, you need to be 21 years old to buy alcohol. 21st made alcohol legal again. And now I'm going to date myself. I'm old enough to remember when 18 was the tobacco age as well. December 5th, 1935, the woman in the picture here is Mary McLeod Bethune. And on this day in New York City, she founds the National Council of Negro Women. This organization is still around today, and it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. December 5th, 1936, this date marks the adoption of the 1936 Soviet Constitution in the Soviet Union, commonly known as the Stalin Constitution. This one replaced the 1924 Constitution, and its date of adoption, December 5th, was known as Constitution Day in the Soviet Union going forward. This was the longest-lasting Soviet constitution, lasting all the way to 1977. Some of the things guaranteed by this constitution were the right to work. Jokes aside, it also enshrined other things such as the right to be taken care of in old age, the right to housing, the right to education, and it guaranteed direct election. Now, at best, all these things would be provided by a strong-hand daddy government, taxing heavily to provide mediocre service. And at worst, well, you better vote the right way, comrade. You don't want to go to a gulag now, do you? December 5th, 1941, more Soviet history. This man you see here is Georgy Zhukov. And on this day, during the Battle of Moscow, this was one of the furthest points that the Germans were able to reach during their invasion of Russia. However, this is the day that Mr. Zhukov here would launch a massive Soviet counterattack against the Germans. The Eastern Front of World War II was especially brutal. Prisoners of war were treated especially horribly by both sides. Millions died on the battlefield on the Eastern Front during the war, and spy paranoia on the Soviet side was so widespread that more often than not, when a Russian POW escaped the German camp and went back to the Russian lines, he was accused of having been let out by voluntarily accepting a mission to sabotage something in the Russian army. They would be given a phony show trial and then sent to Stalin's Gulag system. Among the Red Army men who were imprisoned in Russia during this time was Alexander Solzhenitsyn himself, who blew the whistle on injustice in the Soviet. December 5th, 1943, this was the beginning of Operation Crossbow in World War II. This was a bombing campaign by the Western Allies, that is, the US, the UK, and Canada, against locations that housed a German secret weapons program. That program consisted of the V-1 flying bomb and the V-2 rocket, and these were essentially proto-long-range missiles. Although the Allies did destroy several sites that housed these bombs, the Germans, after this operation, still had the ability to make more of them. And so the war was not over. December 5th, 1945, the disappearance of Flight 19. Did you have a Bermuda Triangle phase as a kid? Because I did. This is one of those stories. A group of aircraft on a U.S. military training mission, 14 airmen in total flying Avenger torpedo bombers, disappeared without a trace flying through the Bermuda Triangle. Another one of history's mysteries. December 5th, 1952, this is the beginning of an event known as the Great Smog in the city of London. As a matter of fact, at the time, London had a lot of air pollution due to the use of burning coal. They were past the Industrial Revolution, but not that far past. So when all the coal dust in the air combined with an especially heavy fog one day, because hey-ho, it's the island of Britain, there's gonna be fog, the result was an especially soupy mixture that resulted in at least 4,000 deaths in the city. Imagine the smell. December 5th, 1955, the American Federation for Labor and the Congress of Industrial Organizations combined to create the AFL-CIO, which is currently the largest federation of labor unions in existence. This powerhouse of organized labor is known for lobbying political influence, as well as campaign donations to, who do you think? Democrats. December 5th, 1964, this is Roger Donlin, and on this date he becomes the first person in the Vietnam War to receive the Medal of Honor, and also the first Army Special Forces soldier to receive that medal. This is the Space Shuttle Endeavour. It is the 5th space shuttle constructed by NASA, and it survived 25 missions between 1992 and 2011. And on December 5th, 2001, it was launching for one of its missions, that is STS-108. It was carrying the Expedition 4 crew of astronauts to the International Space Station. December 5th, 2013, this is the date of death for Nelson Mandela. He is a civil rights activist best known for becoming a figurehead for the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa. December 5th, 2017, this is the date of death for August Ames. This was a unique case. She died by suicide at age 23. And the story behind this is worth noting. She publicly announced on social media that she would refuse to do any pornographic scenes with men who had previously done gay pornographic scenes. And of course, the year being 2017, everyone on the progressive side of politics did not like this. The backlash, both professional and in social media, was enough of a whirlwind that her suicide came just days after that. December 5th, 2021. This was the date of death for Bob Dole. He was a U.S. Senator representing the state of Kansas for nearly 30 years, including being Republican Senate leader for 11 of those years. In a way, I can sort of respect him for retiring when he still has a full 2 decades of life left. Because look at Mitch McConnell, look at Nancy Pelosi, look at Joe Biden, look at any number of these people that should have retired long ago. They are clearly falling apart in office. Their mental faculties are in question as they lead the nation. So something good I can say about Bob Dole is he avoided that and retired at a graceful time. December 5th, 2022, this was the date of death for Kirstie Alley. She was a longtime movie star. She starred in a lot of 80s and 90s films. Most people would know her from Star Trek Wrath of Khan. That was earlier on in her career. Some movies include Madhouse and Look Who's Talking. There was also a lesser-known 1985 miniseries called North and South about the Civil War that she was in. I actually do remember watching that. And on December 5th, 2022, this lady passed away.